Hello and welcome back to the Craft Mansion. Wow, it's been like a month since I last uploaded. I just had an exam and some assignments, but now I'm sort of a bit calmer in my studying schedule, so I can actually start a new project. And this time, I shall be making Legolas's fighting knives from The Lord of the Rings. These are more like daggers rather than swords, and that's why they're called fighting knives, because, well, these are actually swords, you know, this is quite a bit smaller. This is just a printout of an official replica that is sold. I just printed it to start off the project. I will make a proper detailed template which will be available through a link down below in the description for a small fee. As I usually do with swords, I'm going to make the core thing out of foam board, and through the middle where there will be a thin dowel. These are quite small knives, so I don't really need a thick dowel for it. So this will do, although it's quite bent, so I'll see what I can do with this. Small bits of foam board might be enough for the handle, and I usually have small bits in this box over here. But for the blade, I probably have to bust out the large one, which is quite difficult to cut and maneuver. Just get out. Okay. I'm quite sorry for this weird angle and you seeing my home shoes, but I mean, this piece of foam board is literally so large that I cannot fit it properly on my table for a good angle. I haven't been doing nothing this past month. In my limited free time, I've been developing a new skill, digital drawing. I've been using Jezza's old tutorials on YouTube from like a decade ago to try and get better at drawing. So, you know, more skills. Now, I'm only going to show you how to make one of these, because of course the way you make one of them, you can make the other one. And so I need 2 full copies of the whole blade and then 4 copies of the handle, because as per my rough designs here, basically there's going to be 6 layers for the handle and then 2 for the blade, and there will be the dowel in the middle like this. This is 5mm foam board. I like to give the cut 3 passes. One to cut the first layer of paper, another to cut the foam, and the last one for the second layer of paper. When following along the cutting line, I also like to do so at a wide angle rather than perpendicularly down, because like this I can make sure that when stacking layers on each other, I can remove excess foam board and line them up easily. For the handles, I simply cut the needed part from the rest of the template and then trace that for 4 times. As I said, I needed a dowel inside the knives for stability. This one is 6mm in diameter. I traced its outline and then made several cuts on those lines. The second one was roughly a 45-degree angle, so I could create a ditch in the foam board. I used the dowel itself to shape it and then used white glue to stick the dowel in place. Once it was dry, I grabbed the other full knife cutout and pressed it hard against the dowel to mark where I needed to cut the ditch in this other piece. Then I could stick both of them together with white glue. On both sides, I glued on 2 layers of the handle. Once all layers were on, I smoothed all the staggered edges. I decided to reduce some of the thickness from the middle, so I marked it and cut it down to 2.6 centimeters. Bit by bit, I rounded the handle by removing corners each time. So going from a rectangle to an octagon to the shape with 16 sides. I don't know what that's called. Next up, the blade. I split the template in half and traced the central line and cut my way through a sharp beveled edge. I did cut too much foam away in some instances, so I rolled out some milliput, mixed the 2 parts together and filled in the holes on the blade. Once those were dry, I covered the entire thing in Mod Podge. I put on 2 coats in total, sanding the surface gently in between. Boom. The build itself is technically finished. I only gave it 2 coats of Mod Podge to not make it too shiny or even too round, because with a lot of layers, the edges sort of start becoming a bit rounder. So the next step is to paint gold on this part over here for the design. Of course, the design is quite intricate. It's still split from the bevel. I will have to tape it back together. And the idea is that I will spray the gold and then I will tape in the negative pattern. So when I spray the silver, there's all those twirly bits and the rest of the blade. I put the blade template back together and cut away the outer silver areas. Then I put a strip of masking tape on baking paper, flipped it, put another strip at the back, and taped down the template to the whole thing. I removed all the curls from the middle and all the extra tape to end up with 2 sides of the template on masking tape. I couldn't copy the pattern 4 times on tape, and then cutting that pattern 4 times would have been taking too much time, and anyways, with tracing that many details, it's going to ruin those details. So like this, I have a 2-way sticker where there's tape on this side and tape on the other side, and in the middle there's baking paper. It was difficult. To say I was patient is an understatement. I mean, the first part alone took around 5 minutes, but eventually I did manage to tape it properly. Since I was going to use the tape for the other knife, I had to go slowly to prevent it from tearing. Also, it is not that noticeable, but metallic paints usually get a bit messed up once you cover them with tape. I deliberately used this to my advantage, as the gold on the original knives has silver dots in it, and this sort of created a similar effect. The handle is not as shiny as the blade, so I sanded it down slightly so it could feel more like wood. I worked on the details by creating templates on tape itself. This will also be available with the template pack. The handle color is a mixture of yellow, brown, red, and some white. I dry brushed some brown and a lighter shade of the handle color to make it look like wood. I used the same technique as before for the handle details, but used the tracing paper instead of baking, but both work. I masked everything else and used paper on the blade. I decided to make the golden bits at the ends of the handle from golden cardstock. Usually these would be like boxes of sweets, and I find them perfect for props. I traced on the back surface, and when cutting it I left extra cardstock on the outer edge. I glued it on and held it in place for a few minutes. For extra stability, I added super glue to the edge and then cut the cardstock along the actual shape of the handle. This can also be found in the template pack. The other end is much simpler because I just traced the oval and then I glued that on. Finally, I tried to hide some of the white by painting it with gold for the final finished look. these are not the swords that I have created in this video. They're rougher, and this is not the design that I went with. That's because I made these knives when I was about 14. That's 7 years ago. Wait, 8. I just had my birthday 2 days ago. 8 years ago. And as you can see, my love for the craft and for details has increased a lot. My newer props may take up more time, but at the end they are much better and I appreciate them a lot more. These are not the first prop I have recreated. In fact, I have done another 2 projects. Coincidentally, they are both from the Lord of the Rings, and they were Sting over there and Gimli's Axe. I really love doing props from the Lord of the Rings, and I'm really looking forward to do new props from the new series, The Rings of Power. I'm going into it with an open mind, I'm quite looking forward to it, and I really hope they are of the same quality as the Lord of the Rings movies. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below with what you think I should do next. If you haven't done so already, please ring the notification bell down below, and here is the subscribe button so you can subscribe. These are some more videos from my channel, and until next time, these are Legolas's fighting knives. I'm David, and this is the Craft Mention.